Hi, everyone. It's Deborah Hamilton and Why Do Pets Matter podcast. Please remember to like us, to give us 5 stars. And remember, we're on YouTube, so you can watch us as well. So go to Why Do Pets Matter on YouTube. Today, we're going to talk to Jim Bishop. Oh my God, he is phenomenal. He's with Conjunction Leadership. There are so many aspects of this conversation that are going to resonate with you. They might scare you, but they're going to resonate with you. But the two things that I took away that were so important were beliefs, biology, inform behavior. So your beliefs and your biology, if you're aware of what you're feeling, if you're aware of what you're thinking, that's going to inform how you behave. And also living on purpose for a purpose is so important. So now let's see what Jim and I spoke about. Hi, I'm Deborah Hamilton. Welcome to my podcast, Why Do Pets Matter? 10 years ago, with my iPhone and a script, I recorded the first episode of the Ultimate Pet Resolution Summit, which chatted with experts about conflicts over animals. Our conversations were intimate, honest, and illustrated how disagreements over animals occur and how those disagreements can reshape people's lives and relationships. In November 2019, I started Why Do Pets Matter, a new podcast that continued these informative discussions. I'm so excited to have you here with me, continuing my exploration into a more meaningful conversation about why pets matter to all of us. My guests and I will share ideas, stories, and experiences straight from the heart, unscripted and holistic. From the bravest moments to the most brokenhearted, we will explore how to resolve disagreements over animals differently. One thing I know for sure is I want to have more meaningful conversations that will help all of us unlock that deeply felt human-animal bond that drives the emotions of conflict. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the next edition of Why Do Pets Matter? I'm Deborah Hamilton, and remember to like us, give us 5 stars, and share every one of our episodes so that people can learn and grow from why pets matter. Today, we are speaking with the wonderful Jim Bishop. He is a sought-after speaker in all of the veterinary world and beyond. He is the founder and principal coach at Conjunction Leadership. Jim, thanks so much for being here today on Why Do Pets Matter?
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Tell me how you came to be the leader at Conjunction Leadership, because you had quite the vivid life experiences, coming from being a farm kid and moving on to being a veterinarian, and now here's where you are. So tell us a little bit about that, and then I'll ask you the one question we ask everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Deborah, I say I'm kind of in the accidental role. I grew up on the farm. Primary animals around me were the things that made me feel regulated and probably unconditionally loved, and I just naturally got involved with them. As a result, the primary caregiver of those animals oftentimes would interface with a veterinarian. So the veterinarian coming to our farm was very important to me and instrumental in helping me figure out what I wanted to do. And I thought I wanted to go to school for science. So I pursued science. I got a master's and bachelor's in animal science. Thought I was going to use that, went into science and realized the science isn't the hard part, it's the people part. And I had proclivities. I just always studied and understood and kind of had a knack for understanding what people were, how they were working and what they were doing and how we could work more productively together. So while embedded in scientific communities, what I did was I started focusing my career on how do humans get along as scientists. I went into leadership development, executive development, career pathing, succession management, talent management, all those kind of things. And ultimately ended my career in a major pharmaceutical company, working with the CEO and his executive team, helping figure out how do they want to charter themselves in this new era of the way that we were working. And all of that was right around COVID. What was happening was the world was turning upside down. People were scratching their head and trying to figure out who they were again. And I realized the thing that I like to do most was help people kind of in the intersection of the three things that I work in primarily are belief, biology, and behavior, and helping people figure out who am I? How does that influence my biology? And ultimately, how does that change my behavior? And so today, that's what I do on a daily basis is I work with leaders all across the industry, a lot of them from the veterinary or vet med community, and help them figure out how to lead more effectively in these tumultuous times. So
It's so great that you decided to pivot in that way because you're helping so many people stay in the practice of veterinary medicine at a time when it's a little difficult because of the different personalities that are coming into the vet practice. I know that some owners hold their pets in different regard than they might have 10 or 15 years ago. And that pivot in veterinary medicine needs to occur and be understood. But before we get deeply into something like that, I need you to tell me, why do pets matter to you, Jim?
Oh my goodness. Well, Deborah, I just took about a 3 mile walk with my little Corgi dog. And so they matter to me because even from those earliest days of being a child on the farm, I could find my groundedness. I kind of came back to center whenever I was with my animals. So they happened to be livestock animals. And I also had a few farm dogs and farm cats. But I remember my earliest days playing in the farmyard with my grandpa and with kittens surrounded me. I mean, multiple pictures, vivid memories of building a dog house for my dog just when I didn't even know what I was doing. And I'm sure the doghouse looks terrible and probably fell apart, but it was me and him bonding together over that experience. Even today, as a 50 something middle aged man, I still find myself when the world gets dysregulated or is swirling too fast around me, just taking my pet on a walk or sitting there and spending time with them tends to bring my nervous system back into balance where I can see the world in a different perspective and take a deep breath. So that's why pets matter to me. I think they're the place where we find unconditional love and we also find our groundedness, even when we can't go into nature, but nature can come to us. We can bring those animals around us and it just helps the world be a little bit better. So
That has become sort of the rally cry of most people because you've been in this arena for over 20 years, I'm pretty sure. And 20 years ago, the human animal bond was an anecdotal consideration. Now
yeah.
it's peer reviewed studies and people get PhDs in it. Tell me a little bit about what you've seen evolving because you talked about the grounding and the centeredness. And I think that's what's created some of that need for more empathy and compassion on both sides of the leash, right? The veterinarian checking the dog and also the client bringing the dog to the veterinarian. And that might not have kept pace with how we saw dogs in the 70s and 80s and how we see dogs today, dogs and cats.
Yeah, absolutely. And even livestock species, I would say in that regard too. They're horses, larger animals. I mean, most people have this affinity to saying there is something majestic about working in with animals, right? I got my master's degree as one of the first master's students in the livestock animal behavior unit chartered at Purdue University. And that was groundbreaking at the time because it was kind of in that quasi space when how do we treat animals and what's the ethics and morality around them? And I put that as a pivotal moment because I do think since that time the mindset has shifted and we can't underestimate the amount of PTSD that we as a culture undertook in the middle of COVID. The relationship factor that we have with other humans was breaking down already before that, but even more so after that experience. And I think that's probably indicative of why we saw the pet boom afterwards, right? As people needed something to have a ongoing, unconditional relationship with, and pets are a likely natural source for that. I just think it's a huge moment in time for us to be able to say, like, there is something about us bonding with something else that has a heartbeat. And that's why maybe the way that we look at animals or the value proposition behind them, either way, have become more valuable over time. And we can see that in the way that people treat their pets and are taking care of them.
Yeah, it's really important because in the olden days, so I've bred Irish setters and long-haired dachshunds for like 40 years. And in the olden days, the vet would be there and there'd be no boundaries, and that wasn't good either because I would call them up if something was happening during a whelping or something, and they would come to the office. And now it seems that there's much more awareness of downtime that needs to be had by veterinarians who are burning out and leaving the profession. And how do you, because I know that this is part of what you do, how do you help your veterinarians stay grounded, the ones you're working with and coaching, stay grounded and stay centered while also thinking about their own well-being? I always say, you have to put your mask on first.
Yeah, absolutely, Deborah. I couldn't agree with that more. There's a reason they tell us that on the plane, and there's a reason why that works in normal society too, right? So I think it helps to kind of maybe my philosophy, but also the world around us has just become much, much more volatile, right? And in that volatility and uncertainty and ambiguity, the first thing that we want to grasp for is safety, right? We feel unsafe when things are swirling around us. And when we feel unsafe, then automatically there is a biological part of us called our brain, and that part of us that senses non-safety starts reacting, and that anchors us for protection, right? It's not dissimilar to if we were walking in the middle of a street and we saw a car coming to us. What's going to happen is we're immediately thinking, how do I get out of this dangerous situation? And today, almost no matter where we go, no matter what we do, we flip on our phone, we look at the TV, we talk to a client. There is always something there that is causing us to feel a little unsafe. What that's doing is evoking something in us that we're not comfortable with, right? There is a belief or a mindset or something behind that. So, in my regard, when I work with a client, I mean, many coaches will work in that behavioral modification space, and they might teach them some grounding techniques or some breath practices. They might even teach them the best way to handle objections or to say things more appropriately, but that's all behavioral modification, right? I think what we have to do is we have to start looking at the biological piece of this. Like, how is my biology responding? Is my heart rate racing? Am I getting a little sweaty? Am I wanting to fight back or wanting to strangle someone in this moment, right? All of those things are biological responses, but it's all grounded in a belief where everything is founded before. And that belief generally is, I'm not safe. I'm not going to be safe unless, or I'm only valuable if. And when we fill in the basic parts of those statements, what happens is we're able to get to that belief. So if I'm only valuable if I'm logging 120 hours per week, or I'm only valuable if I see more clients, or I'm only valuable if I help this person in the middle of the night whelp their puppies, right? Then what happens is I'm hustling for my safety all day long. And so the piece that we have to really peel back the layers of when someone is feeling like they are not enough or they're not getting there is, where did that belief come from? And how do we rewire that operating system in the person to say, no, wait a minute, you're valuable because of who you are, not because of what you do, because you're first a human being, not a human doing. So let's put the value there. Once I know my identity in that, then how do I let my biology respond to that, right? When I feel my temperature rising, when I feel that happening, how do I speak to it in a way that says I can calm myself back down and come back to my belief that I am okay in the midst of this uncertainty, so that my behavioral response can be something that I wouldn't have done otherwise. And now we can practice that new behavior because it's founded in a new belief. But if what we do is we just focus on the behavioral modification piece, what's going to happen is it's not going to stick, because your biology is always going to override it. Your nervous system and your endocrine system are already hardwired in certain cases to protect you. That's just the way that it is. And so getting around that and understanding what is causing the biology to respond in the first place is, to me, the secret sauce. So a lot of my time with my clients is spent on, who are you? Where did you come from? What's the story and the narrative that you've told yourself over and over and over again? And let's start rewiring that script a little bit so that your biology can respond in a different way and your behaviors will take on new life.
Yeah, Band-Aids don't work. Like
Yeah.
they might be helpful because they'll start you on a path to having some go-to sentences. But if you're not willing to do the deep dive that you provide and find out what's making you tick that creates this response in you every single time, it doesn't help. And that's for clients and pet owners, as well as for veterinarians and staff and anybody, groomers, you name it. Everyone has a story. And unless they delve into the story and recognize, why do I react in this way to this stimulus? And it goes the other way too. If you have a pet and you seek that pet out, like you said, I go for a walk. I go for a walk with my dog too. I'll rub him. I used to have my son's cat who I didn't want to return, but had to because it was his. The amount of endorphins that they release in your body when you are focused on them versus focused on the trials and tribulations that you're facing in life, if you can just center on that and recognize, okay, when this happens, I need to remember how to self-regulate. And I'm sure in a lot of what you are doing and teaching in your coaching, recognizing when you need to self-regulate is the secret sauce, but that's really hard to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds simple, but most people come to me when they're in their midlife, by the time they're at a place of consciousness to say what's working for me isn't working anymore, or I've gotten enough negative feedback that I'm ready to change it, or I just feel stuck and I don't want this lack of joy in my life anymore. Whatever those symptoms are, a lot of business owners will actually come because they say my 5-year plan has now turned into 10 years and I don't know where I'm going. But that is just a symptom of the underlying issue, right? And so when we actually dive back into it, we're able to try and say, okay, well, what isn't working for you anymore? And a lot of that is the pattern that they've created for themselves that up to a certain point did work. Like
Yeah.
I could hustle for a long time when I had unlimited amounts of energy and a lot of discretionary time, right?
Our
I could
20s.
work. Yeah. And that's what my 20s were about. And my 30s were about trying to figure out how to get paid for that, right? And earn more money and climb the ladder. And it did work for people for so long. That's the hard part for them to walk away from, is because I used to get success with this pattern of behavior that I now find frustrating. And it means, just like anything in biology, there is a consistent cycle of growth. And we tend to think as humans that once we get to a certain point in life and our physical growth stops, that our spiritual or mental or social growth should also stop. And that is absolutely not the case, right? So as we achieve different levels of enlightenment or consciousness or spiritual growth, whatever your word is, what happens is there is always a deeper calling for us to achieve a purpose in our life. And when that purpose and safety that we're seeking are in tension with one another, it's like we're drawing the rubber band tighter and tighter and tighter. That's what makes it so difficult for people, is sometimes they're just stretched too thin. They're being drawn towards purpose, but anchored down in safety. And those two things are pulling against one another at all times. What we have to help them realize is you are already safe. You didn't have to create safety. You're not in getting hunted by saber-toothed tigers anymore, and there aren't real people who are going to come take you down. Now, certainly if you speak your voice, that may mean that there are people who don't appreciate that anymore. But being Mr. Nice Guy or Miss Nice Guy all didn't help you up to this point. So maybe we should try something different. Like I like to balance two things in equal. That we need to have equal amounts of candor and we have to have equal amounts of curiosity. And if we're able to put those two things together, what's going to happen is I'm going to be more likely to feel authentic in my own body. So
I love that. And I often speak to people when I'm working with people in conflict. I always use the word curiosity because we come with our own beliefs and our biases. This is
yeah,
what Jim did that. This is what he was thinking. He should have been thinking this, and he should have done that. And
yeah,
sit there and go, well, that is absolutely what you observed and the information you took away. And veterinarians sometimes walk in with a bias against people, say breeders or people who are, what they consider crazy pet owners.
yeah.
But how do people who both of us work with, how do we help them take a breath, get out of what I consider their amygdala, which is that fight, flight, freeze,
Yep, yep.
into just let me breathe. I had a member of a student group that I was teaching, and she said, I used some of your language yesterday, and I just held my boundary and told her she couldn't do this. And I said, well, that's great. I'm really glad that you felt comfortable enough to hold your boundary. And had you discussed the boundary before you needed it?
Mm, yeah,
Because boundaries are not to be thrown down like gauntlets.
yes,
You know,
yeah,
I want boundaries. I want to make sure that my vet will tell me, no, I can't come in the middle of the night for a whelp. And this is what we're going to do in case that happens.
yeah. It's so good.
And often pre-paving of a peaceful discussion or experience or relationship is not necessarily seen as valuable. I don't know how you found it in your work. They want something to say, whether it's a client or a veterinarian or a groomer or whatever in the pet industry, because animals bring out the emotion in everyone. You are on tender hooks when you're dealing with an animal. I feel that all the time, that they probably wouldn't have been this person had it not been about the animal. I don't know how you
Yeah,
I think that veterinarians are in a unique or maybe difficult profession because although pets are now considered children to some people, they don't have the same, I guess, protections or anything else. So you have to step up as a veterinarian, or the client feels they have to step up. So, what are your thoughts? Because you're bringing your beliefs and biases in, and how do we help people who come in recognize what they are, take a minute, stop and breathe.
Well, again, Deborah, it comes back to, I think, that piece of you can focus on behavior modification and you could teach them to breathe. They're not going to remember that they need to breathe if they didn't have the right belief in the first place, right? So it comes back somatically to themselves, like what is happening in my body at this point in time. If they're not aware of that, like so much of my practice with them on the one-on-one is just, I mean, I try to maintain a quiet demeanor. I try to maintain an even posture most of the time we're together. Because in the middle of that, they can actually feel their biology slowing down, right? They can feel their brain settling down. And when they have that observation, like I might even guide them through some periods of quiet. I usually start some of my sessions with at least 30 seconds of self-reflection. It's so obvious when people are uncomfortable with that quiet that their brain isn't in a place, right? And so, but they need to experience that uncomfortableness of just being in silence, because then what happens is they realize my brain has become addicted to the dopamine. It's become addicted to the thing that is giving me that reward mechanism. And so constant busyness, constant being on, constant achievement. These are things that are telling me I'm kind of running the rat race. But if
And
I can, yeah,
valuable.
if I can pull them into a practice, right, that allows them to experience their biology and how their brain physically slows down, how their body will center back down, and how their breath actually comes back on its own, then we're not behaviorally modifying, teaching them box breathing in the moment. They will actually reach out and say, how do I do box breathing? Because I know I need it now. Right. And I think that kind of stuff is really, really helpful for people, because so much of our world, they're not going to go just find silence and solitude if something inside of them isn't comfortable with themselves. And so what we need to help them realize is, back to your analogy, putting your own oxygen mask on, self-care isn't selfish when you're serving other people, because you will become reactive, you will become defensive, you will become overly sensitive to the things they're saying when your biology is not responsive to your own need.
And the ramping up is what really, I love what you're saying. I know that a lot of people who are listening to this might say, oh my God, woohoo again. And I'm like, no, it's actually, wow, I need this. Wow,
Yeah.
I need to stop and take a minute for myself and recognize where I am, especially with veterinarians now doing patient check-ins every 15 or 20 minutes. So they go from one relationship to another relationship to another relationship to another relationship, and everyone is different. And so how do you absolutely, and I say this with all love and affection, veterinarians are desirous of peer-reviewed evidence that this works, and they're not necessarily open to us sharing the peer-reviewed evidence that shows that this works.
At the same time, yes.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I'm sure when you started in this down this path, there was a moment in time when because it happened to me, and I'm putting words in your mouth, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a moment when you recognized that the person who was telling you to pay attention to your biology was right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was walking up the stairs from the basement, from the dog room, and I was going to just read my husband the riot act for something. And then I stopped in the middle of the staircase. I will never forget. I stopped in the middle of the staircase and said, is this how you want to feel? It wasn't about taking my husband to task for whatever it is he did. Who knows? It was not, life threatening. So why was I so upset? But it was just everything that culminates. And we don't recognize as humans that it's a cumulative effect. You are going to respond to certain things in a certain way because of your prior experiences. And as you said, your self-protective desire. So you're going to respond over and over again. And unless you recognize that that's how you respond when you get to this point, then you're right. Having, breathing techniques or sentences that help, but working with veterinarians who want concrete things and not esoteric things, it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're hitting on a really a salient point for any listener that's listening to this, right? Is that any client that I've worked with that has ever made any amount of significant transformation in their life, right? They first did not come to that experience of transformation without some degree of significant pain, right? um, and that to me is the catch point, is like I could go out and I could prospect for 1 million clients, and there are probably 500 of them that might actually be ready. because they're not yet at a point where saying the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of moving forward. And both are going to be uncomfortable, right? Both staying where you're at and feeling like this biology and this experience isn't what I want to be feeling, but it's safe. It's what I know. The pain of moving forward is I got to practice and learn some new things if I'm going to get to something different, right? That's also uncomfortable. It might not be significant pain, but it might cost you a little bit of who you are and how people perceive you. And if you start speaking your own piece or you start asserting different boundaries, they may not like that as well. So it comes with a degree of discomfort.
Yeah.
But
It's just
most people, yeah, most people will not enter a path of transformation unless there is a significant amount of pain. And I work with people who get paid lots of money. I work with not just veterinarian owners, but Fortune 500 CEOs. And they've gotten to where they've gotten because they've been really successful. And when they get to that level of perceived success, the amount of pain that is going to take for them to change is really significant. And they've also created a persona around them many times. They don't think that they've projected to everyone that they're strong enough and fit enough and good enough to make this all happen. And if they have to admit they need help, gosh, then that's even a more significant pain. But when they come to a place where maybe they've had a diagnosis, maybe there's a disease, or maybe there's a death of a loved one, or something pokes that bubble of what is life about, that esoteric question that we're all trying to answer, they can come to that place of going, gosh, am I really living on purpose for a purpose? And is this mattering? And when they do that, that pain becomes now life altering. They can step through it and say, I want to do something different. But there are so many people walking around right now who are just living in that matrix, who are just living in the dopamine addiction and the rush and the hustle and the hurry culture. And they haven't yet realized what it's costing them, right? They haven't yet felt that pain. And it's not because I'm callous, but I think you just have to wait for someone to experience the way that they're working isn't working for them anymore. And then when they do, they're going to say, okay, I'm ready to do something different. And some people call that the bottom, the bottom of the rope moment or the valley moment. But I also think if you use that analogy, like when you're at the bottom of your rope or you're in the valley, that's oftentimes when things are the most fertile for growth. Like the most lush vegetation doesn't grow on the mountaintop. It actually grows in the valley where the soil is fertilist, right? So
I love that because if you're at the bottom of the rope, the only place you have to go is up, right?
yeah,
And you can take your time. What was swimming through my head while you were talking was we live a life that's relentless.
yeah,
Maybe the first 5 years we're out there being present in the moment, experiencing, dogs, cats, birds, flowers, whatever, as a first time and being present in the moment. And then all of a sudden we have to think about the past and then we have to think about the future and then we have to think about now. That's what creates that relentlessness, which
yes,
may not enable us to take the time to recognize what we need to do. I loved it when you said living on purpose for a purpose, living your life fully, not just being the best, but leading with empathy, compassion, which may not be seen as by the leader, by their staff and their people. It really does resonate and helps them maybe take that time to recognize, well, what's important to me and how might I stand up to Jim when he says something because it really isn't helping me live on purpose for a purpose for this business or for my life, because we're all intertwined with our businesses. You're intertwined with conjunction. You want to do well, you want to help people. I want to do well and help people. And yet we have to figure out, and maybe that's why both of us took, pivots place, because we had that walking up the stair moment. I guess I was at the bottom of the stairs, and then in the middle of the stairs, I went, oh, I should have had a V8. Is this really that important? And I think that's what we are talking about here today for people who are listening. Try to take a minute to think about what really is important to you, and then strive to find someone to help you get there.
yeah, absolutely, Deborah. Your middle of the stair moment was my hotel moment, I say. We had four children. We adopted number four. We found out we were expecting number five. So I ended up with five children really, really quickly. And I was also at the point in my career where I was traveling all the time. And I had actually wanted both things. I wanted a large family and I wanted this career. And I was sitting in a hotel room in the middle of Dallas one night, burned out, exhausted from 2 weeks of full travel, went to the bar, had a drink, tried to calm myself down, came back to my room. And maybe it was the alcohol, maybe it was a moment of clarity, but I thought, all of a sudden now I'm in a place where these two things are at opposites of one another. And my biology was all anxious and nervous that I wanted this larger family and I wanted this career. But now I was thinking if I didn't have this larger family, I could actually have my career. I could have more of this. And I
Or
thought, well,
have this larger family, I wouldn't need this big a career.
yes. And I thought this is sick and twisted because I had actually desired and prayed for both of these things that are blessings. And now I've turned them both into a curse. So it was in that moment I was like, what is this thing that I want more? And I'm searching for significance. I'm not searching for success in these things. And it was that moment that kind of started me in my own journey of saying, well, how do I take two things that are in tension and put them together with an and? So thus the name conjunction became it was in the back of my mind even before it was a business because I thought how if people feel that most of the time, and I think the people that I work with are tending to be high achievers, they always want more, there's always things in tension. But a lot of times our brain just wants to split it and say it's an or. It's either I have a career or I have a family. Or I do this or I do that because those are the most readily available options. But when I choose to put the and in between it may mean that my path, as an example, was corporate America wasn't going to do it for me. My salary was always going to be capped in a helping profession. But if I wanted to continue to grow and earn more as and do what I love doing and do that because I want to be with my family, not at the expense of my family, that meant entrepreneurship was a better path for me. And that required an entire new brain and mindset and skill set that I didn't have growing up in corporate America. But I can be resilient and I can learn and I can go back to a place of wonder and curiosity. And if I'm not dead, I'm not done. Right. So allowing the and in between those things gives people their unique path in life. But oftentimes in our dopamine addicted oriented culture, we're not spending enough time thinking, how do I put these things together? I just want them one or the other.
It's sort of like when I help people who are in a conflict conversation and they go, but Deborah, and I go, okay, so if you tell me that you really, respect what Jim told you about his experience in your interaction, and then you say, but
But yeah,
I said everything you said that was really nice to Jim at the beginning goes right out the window because now you're qualifying it. There was a time I was doing a presentation with Jim Wilson at a New Jersey vet conference, and I put up the AVMA's social media sentences, and it said, "We're so sorry that your experience at our practice was not what we hoped it would be. We strive to practice really great medicine. Please call us so we can talk about it." And I said to the audience, so about 100, which sentence here is superfluous? And there wasn't a hand that went up. They didn't have any idea. And I said, if somebody's saying something negative about you, adding that middle sentence that says, we strive to, clearly you didn't meet that strive. And so leave it out. It's just that trigger that's going to have them post 4 more negative posts about you. Just say, we are sorry you didn't do this, and let's talk. And then go to someone like Jim, or if you're really in conflict and they want to sue you, go to somebody like me because I'm diffusing that so that it doesn't go to lawsuit, it doesn't go to license review, because there is nothing worse for any professional than to have somebody file a license review on you. You talk about having heart palpitations and wondering why you're doing this. Have somebody do that and you go, but I tried to do the best I could for that person. And yet maybe your transparency wasn't the greatest. Maybe your bedside manner wasn't. Maybe you were just out of a room that was noxious and then you went into this room and maybe you made a mistake and had, when you were in vet school, I'm sure that the lawyers came in and scared the bejesus out of you about what you can and cannot say to a client. And that's really difficult for people. So for me, when I'm chatting with them, if I can help them understand the difference, and I love that you put this, and instead of or, and instead of but.
we use some hashtags in our social media. One of them is ban the butt, and one of them is no more or, right? So
Yep. I love those. I'm going to have to take those and steal those because I have to that if you could, I always say, just say, I am really sorry we didn't, it didn't, your experience here didn't meet what we had hoped it would meet. Period. I said, hear my voice in your head saying, period.
Yeah. Yes. Yep.
Oh my goodness. I love this because there were so many things that you brought up that I could go on and where at the time. So I'm so thrilled that you've come on Why Do Pets Matter. I hope we can have a conversation in like 6 months because I think what we covered here is sort of a little tickle in the back of the throat of people who are struggling to recognize, there are people out there who are going to help you be in the hotel room for the revelation, be in the middle of the staircase for the revelation, be at the end of the rope for the revelation, but understanding that it starts with you.
It absolutely starts with I just wrote a book and the book is called The Adventure Within, but it starts with that adventure within, a still small voice somewhere inside of you saying something's not aligned. And a lot of times we can go one of two paths. Some people will go the path of saying, I'm so weird and unique that I could never tell anyone else about this or they're going to judge me. Or you could go the other path and you can tell people, hey, I think there's something coming alive in me and I need to step closer to this. And you're going to find that there are a lot more people traveling that path in quiet solitude. And when we travel it together, we realize we can achieve amazing things when we step into our own power. But if I hide in that over here on the other side and I don't tell anybody that things aren't quite right, or I'm feeling like I'm not aligned with my inner being, then what's going to happen is we just start feeling like we're isolated and weird and we pull ourselves out of relationship and we have greater needs for having animals in our life and we have greater mental challenges that we face when we have resilience in life, right? So I think on the other side of it is the path of least resistance when we just say, look, I know I feel a little weird, but I am not weird. Many other people have walked a path of finding their own uniqueness and their own purpose in this life. And it means I'm not doing it with them or comparing against them. It just means I'm walking a better step than I was yesterday. And I'm 1 degree different than I was yesterday. It doesn't mean I'm all fixed and it doesn't mean I'm all better, but I can see that what I'm doing is different than what I've done.
And as a leader, if you take those first very scary steps,
Yes.
you can then help people who are working with you, watching you, maybe consider that, wow, if Jim is brave enough to do this, maybe there's room for me in that
Yeah.
different area because all people are different and we should celebrate their differences, not their similarities. And there is, I'll say this and it's a joke, but okay, there's more than one way to skin a cat, but the cat never likes it anyway. But
Yes.
there are different ways to do this and to take the time to recognize you're worth it. And whatever your uniqueness is, people want to know about it, not because they want to silo you in the weird, creepy thing, but rather that if they know, then they can adjust how they might receive the information. Oh, this really triggers her when this happens. Well, I'm going to just recognize that. And if it has to happen, I'm going to be empathetic about triggering and asking maybe how might we do this differently so it doesn't trigger you.
Yep. Absolutely.
I love that you wrote a book. Please tell everybody where they can get in touch with you if they want to have a conversation, if they want to start this journey, because it is a journey. And I don't know, when you're at the bottom of the rope, you may look up and say, oh, geez, that's a long way up. However, if you do it in a way that you're suggesting and that I'm hopefully agreeing with you in suggesting, it'll be an easier rope to climb.
Absolutely. I think one of the presenting challenges I find when working with clients is, especially when they've been successful and they're high achievers, they don't think they need a coach. They don't think they need someone alongside of them because in their mind, a coaching is for somebody who's subpar or underperforming, right? And so it may not feel like a bottom of the rope moment for them. But they also can look up and say, but there's so much more. There's so much more that I'm not getting to today. And that doesn't mean you're at the bottom. It just means you're still climbing. And I tell people all the time, like even Michael Jordan had a coach, right? And it wasn't because he was trying to make him better. It was because he needed some accountability in his life to continue to climb to the greatest level that he could possibly do. There are all kinds of high achievers in this world who say, I travel with other people who help me get better, right? And that's the mindset that people need to have. That's the mindset that I try to carry forward in my socials or where people can find me. I mean, I'm still old school. So if you send me an email, I'm going to respond. It's me, not a robot.
Yes,
People
you
respond. Yeah. People can respond to me at Jim at conjunctionleadership.com. That's probably the easiest and the fastest. I'm always active on LinkedIn. Follow me there just under Jim Bishop. I post daily leadership thoughts or reflections or even hints or tips that other people have adopted in their own life. And all of that's in service to humanity and saying, let's just make this place a better place. If you want to get a copy of the book, that's available on Amazon. I just find they're the cheapest and easiest for me to do the distribution through it. So the title is called The Adventure Within: Why Successful Professionals Can Still Feel Stuck, and how to recapture that craving for adventure. And if you want to follow on Facebook or Instagram, I'm also there, but less active than I would be on LinkedIn. So, but
Here.
I think that the best way for people is still, I'm old school. You can call me, you can phone me, you can look me up on the internet, but I'm going to respond personally because I just believe human to human connection is the way that we will make the world a better place.
Well, I'm so glad that you responded to me, and I'm so glad you came to speak on Why Do Pets. I mean, it's so impactful for me because of the journey I've taken, and I'm sure when you reflect on the journey you've taken, it isn't easy. There are those times when, but I always succeeded at this, and I always did it this way, and why would I want to change? Because that's what's working. Well, it's working, but are you really thriving?
Yes. Thriving is the question, right?
Yep.
Surviving, that's not hard to do. Thriving, that takes work.
And I just changed the statements on my website to be the person your pet thinks you are, which means that you really need to think that you really are this person who, with all your uniqueness, with all your unicornness, with all your pimples and warts, with all your, yeah, it's hard to be transparent. However, when you're transparent, it helps others be more aware of who you are. And isn't that what we all want? I want somebody to see me.
Absolutely. I just put a post on LinkedIn about that, about too many leaders are invoking the word psychological safety and trying to do workshops and events and helping their teams become that, but they're not yet in a place of exhibiting that or embodying that. And so without the vulnerability and letting me see into your humanity, I will never actually feel safe. I only feel safe around people who are similar to me. And if I have insecurities in the back of my head, but my leader projects full confidence at all costs, then what happens is I'm not similar to you and I will never feel safe around you. But if my leader projects that humanity that we all share, uncertainty, volatility, ambiguity, they're all things we experience. Now, that doesn't mean I have to say as a leader, oh my gosh, the ship is going down and I have no idea how to ride it. We're certainly not going to exhibit that level. But if we say, gosh, I'm under advisement and I'm traveling with a coach and they're helping me become a better human because there are things in my life I'm not comfortable with. And there are ways that I lead that I know I need to get better. That just allows me to see into you, which is the definition of intimacy, into me see. If I'm able to see into you, then I'm able to understand that I can be myself around you, which is the definition of psychological safety, right? I think too many people have taken the phrase and tried to apply it, behavior modification, but they haven't actually tried to embody it. And that's my hope for people, is that we can get to that place where, yes, we're doing great things together as humans because we're human, not because I'm your boss and you're my subordinate.
Jim, I so appreciate this because it's not something you can learn, it's something you have to do.
Yes,
It is
absolutely.
commitment you have to make to yourself first. So I am so glad you've come. I hope we can do this again in 6 months or so, because I think we all need this reminder. Anything I can do to spread the word about conjunction, let me know, because that's my mission. And why do pets matter? Because pets matter. And if we could be the person our pets think we are going to be halfway on the way to doing this.
Yes, I love that. I'm going to be that person that my corgi looks at every time I walk out there. So,
Yeah, I just wish I could be the person my Irish setter thinks I am. He is really deluded. But anyway, on that note, everyone, have a great day. Thank you for coming to Why Do Pets Matter? And until next time, kiss your dog, your cat, your bird, your horse, even your lizard. I'm Deborah Hamilton. See you soon.